So it's a good thing I had on that to read a question. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about documentation, quantities, measurements. So we've gone over some of these topics on some of the other presentations, but this will kind of tie it together a little bit. And then Andy's going to come in on Friday, tomorrow, and there'll be some similar things where you can find things on the Bridge Office website and so forth. So it's important for you as an inspector to accurately record everything that's used on the bridge, and so I mean that's evident, including diaries and things like that. Nowadays, a lot of the things that you record are in the AASHTOWare, so this isn't going to be a teaching session on AASHTOWare. In fact, some of the slides are still just hand methods and so forth. Pre-construction meetings, so you guys are all well aware of pre-construction meetings and the things that should happen. But yeah, what's the contractor's operations? Kevin spoke a little bit about the CPM schedule. They should be relaying that onto you guys. Emergency contracts, who's the subcontractors, all kinds of stuff. So nothing new to you guys that have been involved in projects, but just be aware of that. And the deputies and engineers and you guys as the inspectors really should be involved there. Federal highway, if there's some federal funds, utilities, safety, civil rights. And there's a lot of references here to the construction section, OCIC. So there's more information online. Emergency contact list, and obviously with phones nowadays, it's good for everybody to just put a couple of emergency contacts in your phone so you have them in event of need. And it's handy to have. And when you're a project engineer or a project supervisor, you might get a call in the middle of the night, hey, there's an accident, something happened on your project. Okay, who do we get in contact with? You have some numbers there. Just a reminder of the change in construction status. So there is a form to say when did we start? When do working days start? Is there an intermediate completion date? Did we hit it? Any of that kind of stuff. So just make sure the forms get filled out properly. Signed by the project engineer, submitted as progress occurs. Not at the end of the project. Oh, let's see, what day did we start? It's good to know that and have that. The poster board, this is the responsibility of the contractor. So just, I think us as inspectors, us as owners, just want to make sure that those things are also properly provided, so that we have that. So, based on funding and what kind of things that we have, so I'll look at the website and see the most recent information is there. Labor compliance, this has changed a lot. We were, on St. Croix, we were just in the very early stages of doing a lot of that stuff online. Now I'm sure it's probably going to be more old hat, but there's always been labor compliance, but the stuff that's been required now recently is a little more detailed. So you guys are well aware of this. I don't have to speak about that. The monthly compliance reviews, who's working, what ways are they getting. And including, I guess, independent operators, ICO, is what is the wage that we're getting. And are the certified payrolls, that certified payroll is the electronic piece that we were doing on St. Croix. That was kind of, as it started back around 2015.
I heard our tackle would be
you know, that little line. So someone can come to the you know, the exact, you know, yeah, wages, yeah, we do it. I don't know how they, the formula, I mean, I think I can formula that actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, I think what you really do, I mean, I think they're like, you know what, you know, it's all you, because I just want to,
Yeah.
get paid properly, but.
Right, so that's the intent, you know, the union scale is, you know, the pay scale is in the proposal, they should be getting that. And, I don't know, there's a lot of seasoned people here, what do you do if people are refusing
You can build a skip today.
to stick, not even do it?
Not even do it because it causes issues. So if they put the wrong pay number down, it causes issues now. This is what we've been
I had
told.
that happen where they refused to give me the answers. No, the former gave me answers, and then I said I needed the employees also. And he finally gave me his employees, he had like 9 employees, they all had the exact same name. They're all not white.
Okay.
They all had Hector for a first name and no last name. And it turns out that they were paying them all in cash. And everybody that was white was getting like scale, and everybody that wasn't white was getting like $10 an hour because they came up from down south.
So what happened in that contract?
Well, I'm sure they got a lot of trouble. Because it went right out of, I worked for the county at the time. Went right out of the county stands and the state took over.
Company should have been blacklisted under that.
Yeah, so they should, I mean, obviously that's, for one, it's defrauding the state. For two, it's defrauding those people that are working. Yeah, so that should be something that, you know, that contractor should be on that list where, you know, whatever, but.
So I know.
Yeah, so I think it's good, and you guys as inspectors, I would say you need to, you know, get yourself in trouble, you gotta work with these folks as well. But that's a good thing to then elevate to somebody in the district. And maybe it's the district labor compliance, call EEO office, you know, somebody to come out and say, hey Hector, what's your, Hector, what's your?
In my district, they just told us, get their name in their position, and our office manager has taken it from there.
Okay.
At least verify they're getting the exact part of the scale, wage, and the name brand. We don't, like, we've been told, don't worry about the wages, because you'll run into things like that. I have it myself, but I've never asked for their wage. A lot of times when I do ask them, they're gonna ask me, well, where's the postal board? And then I'll direct them to that, because that's what I got there as well.
Yeah.
So I've tried to, when I run across something like that, I try to explain to them that it's to their benefit for them to disclose to me how much they're actually being paid. So that they're not being paid for the should be getting paid, that they probably just money that area, they're not getting paid correctly. And, you know, to their benefit. But if they say, I don't know, I mean, they give me a number out, right on, I don't know. Unsure of what they're actually getting paid.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, this sounds like it's something that you guys run into. I actually, personally, I never had, in my positions, I've never been the one to have to ask, you know, workers what they get. But I know it goes on, it can be problematic, it sounds like. I think everybody's aware of it. By the same token, there are vehicles that we have that help ensure that, for one, they're bidding right. And you know, obviously the contractors, if one is having labor at $10 an hour, another guy's paying $40 scale, that's a huge difference in, you know, whatever. So it's given a huge advantage to the company that's breaking those rules. Okay, traffic control. Make sure that you check traffic control and how often, who's doing it? Is that one of your responsibilities? Is it the project engineer's responsibility? But document it and make some notes. So contractor is obviously responsible for setting up and maintaining it, but we want to check to make sure it's in compliance. And what's the reason? It's I think we got the next one here. I'll tell you, traffic control, field manual, a link right there. And so this one, you go out there on a certain day and is anything missing? Okay, we had a couple of things missing. And end of day, what's happened? Hopefully, if there's device missing, yes, hopefully tomorrow it shows that the correct thing is done.
But the daily is on contract, daily inspection of the trash.
They have to, but we as inspection.
Yeah, we
team
still
should-
need to verify that what they're supposed to set up,
Correct.
set up, yeah.
Yep, yep. And so on St. Croix, we had a guy running through, so Highway 95 was closed while we were setting segments on top. The road curved, some guy on a motorcycle went 100 miles an hour and didn't curve. And so then there was lawsuits, but, so that's one of the calls I got in the middle of the night. And
Did he survive a crash?
we did not. How can we prove what we had? And we had enough photos, we had enough people's diaries to say, and you guys probably know Juan Podesta, he was one of our inspectors out there, he had good notes, and we were able to show that the traffic control was adequate, the advanced signs were adequate, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it helps then when it goes to some type of lawsuit that we have documentation saying, yep, it was there. And unfortunately, the kid went 100 miles an hour and like the work zone. Didn't make it. So just remember. Concrete mixed designs, so the 2016 standard specs and 2020, you know, since then, now require the contractor to design all ready-mix designs. Other than, you know, again, there's like the low slump is still one, and there's a couple of minor mixes that are still specified. And so this is a form for the contractor mix design, and you know, what kind of things are used in the different mixes. So showing the top line, for instance, 3F52. It says flat work. So again, we're going to have different mixes. And this makes sense. 20 years ago, I was on a committee with some of the concrete suppliers, some MnDOT folks, concrete office. And one thing I remember is that one of the concrete suppliers says, why does MnDOT insist on using 1960 mix designs for your bridges? And that makes sense, that yeah, there's a lot of things that concrete suppliers have learned that they can prepare much better mixes than 1960 technology. And so thus, that was the impetus to go then eventually here to essentially everything is contractor mix design. And so there's some tests that they need to do and so forth. So for finding improved mix designs, you can look there. But they, as part of the mix design, they have to prove by a series of cylinders, testing, what's the strength, 28-day strength, maybe some strength curves, what's the durability, permeability, things like that. So they need to prepare that kind of stuff. So there's going to be work adjacent to bridges. So what do we have? So here's just some of the grading and base that we need to get in. So send that kind of stuff to the grading and base unit, and there's forms that can be found there. Metro inspection, let's see, call Metro inspection like 3 o'clock. I think something changed here last year.
They have it all on, it's online.
It's all online now. That's what we're changing.
You can still call them, but they for free you do it online.
Okay. So anyway, those of you who are familiar with and work in the Metro, you know, this is something that happens outstate. There's some processes as well, but just so they're aware of what kind of things we look for. Inspection reports can take many different tracks. This is one example of receiving materials and tracking it. So this is a small time, 2461, so that's structural concrete, 3x43, and it was 3.5 cubic yards, poured in late afternoon, and so just going to show what they did. Likewise, steel pile, similar to that. So bridge beams, we'll always want to make sure that they are inspected in the plant, and so they're going to come with the little stamps and the little markings. So there's going to be a stamp, and then there's going to be an X at it right here. So remember our grading plan? I mean, not quite I say grading plan, our framing plan, we have a designation of an XN. So there is actually going to be, physically, unless they miss it, there will be an X stamped on the beam. So that means that side of the beam goes to wherever it shows the X end on our framing plan. That matters because the diaphragm spacing will be different. It might be 30 feet to the diaphragm from this side and 50 feet to the diaphragm from that side, whatever the numbers are. And if you get some of these beams turned upside down, and, end to end, the diaphragm holes will not line up. And so that's the reason for the X. Just another picture of it. I did mention the bridge deck placement checklist. There's 4 different pages. This is on the MnDOT bridge website. Again, this isn't something that's required, but it's a great tool for you guys to go in, pre-pour, prior to placement, during the placement. What kind of things should we look at? Here, this one. Check frequency of pulses of vibrators. Use non-metallic head vibrators. Just good reminders as you're going through. It's hard to remember all of the stuff that we're learning here, or that even as you gain experience. So this little checklist just reminds, oh yeah, non-metallic head vibrators. The reason is if you have a metallic head, it could damage, as the vibrator goes down, it can damage the coating on the rebar. So a couple more pages of that. For wear, of course, there's also a little checklist that can be done here, pre-production, planning the overlay, things that we need to consider. Calibrating concrete mobile, various things in there. And so again, you can find that on the Bridge Office website. Here's a checklist for ornamental rail. This might be something we don't do very often, but things like, I had that little question of, you don't paint the nuts and the bolts after installation, so I'm not sure that might be on there, but all these different things for anchorages. What do we have? What kind of things do we need? And again, that's on the Bridge Office website, so be familiar with that. A bridge clearance sheet. This is important, and it's important especially if you're restricting something. So I remember getting a call one time. We were widening the bridge. It's 169 over 694, so just 10 miles to the southwest of here. And we widened out to one side. And it was a temporary widening while we were prepping to build a new bridge. Well, those beams came down at the same slope. So the bottom of beam before provided, let's say, a 14'6" clearance. And then it came down 14'3", 14'0". So all of a sudden there was a beam that was, I don't remember the numbers, but let's say 6 inches lower than the permit office thought it was. So the permit office routed a truck under that bridge and boom, hit that beam that had just been put up. Oops. So get these in to the permit office, to your overload, to your permit people in the district, to the bridge office, just so it gets into the right people so they can adequately route the overheight type. So here's just a picture of it. This is an old bridge, 11'6" clearance, but this is what happens when people don't pay attention. But on that one, like 694 over under 169, that's not a truck driver's problem that he went somewhere he wasn't supposed to. That's an issue that we in the field didn't get the right information to the permit office to tell that truck, no, you got to go around this bridge right now. You can't go with your 14'3" load. So we've talked about as-built a couple of times, and this is now electronic. This is also something that now is required in Division S of the specs. It's that the contractor has to fill this out. I'm not sure why we had to go to that point, but I just learned that during this class. So something to be aware of. But and as they fill it out, just make sure we have the right product. There's going to be things on paint. There's going to be things on type of bearing, type of joints, surface finish. Just make sure we get the correct things there. So there's the spreadsheet. Quantity documentation. So we did a few little quantities. We're looking at substructures. So it's math. It's just doing things. Keep those quantities. If there's ever any disputes, then you'll have some backup. If you can't rectify what the issue is, contact the designer. They should have some calculations that would show, okay, here's how I got to 173 cubic yards. Okay, well maybe they made an error, but anyway, it gives a chance to do that. So obviously we track, we measure, we document all pay quantities that are used during construction, and we want to have some means of verifying the quantities. So the drawings, the invoices, the calculations, whatever. So know the breakdown of the different funding sources. That comes in more so as we're paying. I don't know, St. Croix, we had 9 different funding sources, so it gets a little more complicated as we're doing the pay. So this is probably more the project engineers that would be doing this kind of stuff. Yeah. You'd be aware of that. So quantity, this one is with this bar. Reinforcement bar. So nowadays there's spreadsheets. Some of you guys said that your district has prepared spreadsheets, but as you do that, just be aware of how to do it. But spreadsheets make it easy, so long as you don't have a mistake in your spreadsheet. How you calculate it. Pay vouchers, typically monthly, sometimes it'll be bi-weekly. Most everything now is Ashleware, so folks are much more familiar with Ashleware than I am. Daily diaries, important. So I know Kevin mentioned it. Don't always just put on there things that went bad. Put on things progress, things that go good. Keep your opinions out of it and keep it to the facts. So no real rocket science with that, but record the progress, any delays that were encountered, reason, working days charged, any notations about things that went on. So it can be handwritten or electronic. I've always, for some reason, liked the handwritten, so I've had handwritten diaries, but nowadays it's plenty easy to do everything electronically. And I think this is something Kevin mentioned, usually does, failure to record an event can be construed to mean the event did not occur or was incident. So as you're keeping your diaries, just keep that in mind. If you don't say, yeah, the crew wasn't around for 2 days, mean, no big deal, and it's hard to prove it. Weekly diary, similar, just keep up with that, keep up on working days if they're utilized, and any of the quantities of work that progress during that time. So make sure that we have proper people, including state aid if that's requested for a state aid project. So this particular form was a state aid form. And photographs. So these are a couple of photos on St. Croix, a couple of the issues we came across. So this was big, huge precast concrete segments. So we went out here and there was a segment, this was like segment 3 and 4, something like that. Segments didn't close up. Well, if segments don't close up, it means our geometry is going to start going haywire. And so we need to make a determination of what we're going to do. But it's a good idea then to have some photographs. Either have a date stamp on the photo, or this is electronic, so there's going to be an electronic date stamp. Keep that on there. We had a lot of claims due to rebar congestion. So this is like an anchored zone in a cast-in-place portion of the box. You can see the PT ducts that are going through there. When Mark was talking about rebar, he's talking about tolerances. And I said the PT ducts had a plus or minus 1/8, so they can't move a lot. They have to be where they're supposed to be. Rebar might have a plus or minus an inch. And so now all of a sudden a rebar is trying to pull a PT duct down, and the PT duct can't move. So photos that we took over time helped in our negotiations. I don't know how much, because I think we gave a lot to the contractor ultimately to resolve everything. But it's a thing that the more photos we could have, the better help us make the negotiations at the end of the time. So also preliminary before anything started during construction, things that go well and any issues. So pretty self-explanatory there. Nowadays with our phones, no excuse not to take photos. Schedule materials control, we have this in the proposal for testing requirements. So we had a little exercise we did a few days ago about that. So make sure the correct number, types of tests are completed. All the paperwork is in file. It'll be needed when you finalize the project. So here again, just looking at, have a certified ready mix. We're doing, what's our red lines for contractor mix designs, and so forth. So just be aware of what it is. So the schedule materials control is updated yearly, and it'll be whatever's in your proposal, that's what's current for your job. Buy America, and that now is called what? Buy America, Build America? Yeah. And so if that's used on a project, all manufacturing must occur in the U.S. Refer to your special provisions, and it's typical for federal, and it may include things like castings, siding posts, light poles. On St. Croix, there's little things like even the little wedges for some of the post-tensioning, and a couple of the post-tensioning things that we had. Couplers, we ran into issues with couplers, and so they had some foreign couplers for a while. And so there is provisions that can be done. There's often a cap at 0.1% of the total contract cost. So I need to just keep a running total of what's non-America, what kind of things do we need to track and record. So the APL, so this is from the MnDOT APL. For bridge, will be most often in these two, the bridge and the concrete. But then there could be something that comes, there's some precast concrete might come in, there might be some other things that, maybe some geosynthetics depending on what kind of things you're doing. The vendors that have been approved are on this list, and so the updated list, I'm sure everybody's probably been to the APL for something. You guys have been around, so if you don't know where to find it, there's a link. So bridge products, so you click on bridge products, and then you get all these other things that come up, so like modular joint systems, expansion joint systems, coatings, different things are in there. The material on hand, this happens quite a bit in our bridges. Things like piling. The piling gets fabricated by somebody, gets shipped to the site, get material on hand. Structural steel, fabricating big steel girders. It's a lot of money for that fabricator to fabricate it. It's sitting in their yard waiting until they can put it up. And so we can pay for that, the material on hand. Contractor just has to provide appropriate documentation. So what do they have for invoices from the steel mill? What do they have for fabrication invoices? Photos maybe showing, yeah, the girders that go on this bridge, they are fabricated. They're sitting in the yard in Eau Claire, or whatever. So Dwayne's going to talk a lot about the SWIP and all things related this afternoon, but just know that erosion control is important. On St. Croix, we were over a national scenic riverway. There was even more eyes on that project than most. And so it's important to know what kind of things are required. Be aware of what your SWIP says, be aware of what all our erosion control things are, and utilize this as a reference when performing inspections. And so then there's sheets like this that would say what kind of things do we have? Is perimeter control functioning? And yes or no, and then comment or action. So if there's a problem, we want to make sure that it gets addressed in a timely manner. And I'm sure Dwayne will mention that there could be some big fines if we don't adequately control the pollution and the runoff things on our bridges. Contract changes, the change orders. So this also used to have what were called supplemental agreements. And everything now is called change order, and we just have work orders as well. But change order level 1, change order level 2. Level 1 is typically kind of basic stuff. The contractor says this, and we're going to do it. So this is things that are shown on the OCIC website, but it can document substitution materials, kind of basic stuff. But if you get into level 2, you need that when we're directing a contractor to perform additional work, or some liquidated damages are waived, we're experimenting with something else, changed work, anything that gets more major at the change order level. So just an example of a change order level 1, shown here, document adjustments, minor plan changes, and again, we're substituting material, new standard, changing a P quantity, things that are pretty basic, and that's where this would happen. Change order level 2 then, we kind of mentioned this, directive to perform work. We want you to do something in addition to what the contract says. We're going to document something that changed. We're going to alter the scope or character of work and settlement of claims. So all those things would be in the change order level 2. Force account. We want the contractor to do some additional work. We'll pay you for it. And this is just showing what do you have for labor, material, and equipment? So real basic, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. So also important that they have the contractor sign off. Doesn't do us much good if we hold on to this piece of paper and then 4 months later, we're trying to agree on price and they say, oh no, I had 2 other cranes out there, a dozer, I had an extra crew of 4 other people and so forth. So get contractor buy-off in a timely manner.
I got a question on that.
Yep.
I know, most of the time it's not, it's all about visibility to you and the contractors. And then you probably, implement the postponer if you want to get them to sign.
If they refuse to sign it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, that happens, and even things like, it's something as simple as, we had weekly minutes at St. Croix, and we were in the midst of various disputes, and I would write minutes, and the contractor would make changes to minutes like he thinks, and I would say no, and so pretty soon, we can't even agree on minutes, let alone on something like this. But if they don't, at least we have documentation. We say, okay, we signed it here. Maybe make a note that discussed with contractor on, January 16th, something like that. But just so we can document that, yeah, we tried to get that, and they may have some reason. Maybe you can give them to that, give this to them, and they would make some notes and say, if you make these changes, I'll sign it, and whatever. But just try to keep some documentation of the dialogue that you had. So there is on the OCIC web page, there's this contract revision flow chart that when do you do things, and so I'm not going to go through that whole chart, but especially if you get into project supervisor type, project engineer type, this is the things that you can utilize to get things ready. Final versus substantial completion. Substantial is the public agency can put the public work to use for its intended purpose. But there might be things like we're not fully done. So this is the 35W over Mississippi River Bridge. This had substantial completion for a number of months. They argued about the color that was put on there. I think they painted it 3 times or something. Couldn't come to agreement, but it's still open, it's still substantially complete, and so that is that. The final process, I know some of you, I'm sure, have been through or at least helped with the filing process. So Spec 1516 and 1908 address some of the filing procedures, so it's laid out in the spec book, but essentially we're ready to accept it, we've completed the work, and we need to go through this. And this 1908 final estimate and payment follows the 1516, and it's signed by the department and the contractor. And here, inspector needs documentation for all final quantities. So that's where, as you're going through the project, keep those records of whatever you're documenting, and be ready for that. So these are some of the things you need: the IC of 134, the final quantities, material certs, prevailing wages, if there's any of the DBE, TTV stuff, determination of the permits, things like that, all should be included. Okay, and then we'll just say a couple of slides here for the inspectors. What should you be doing? So a daily diary is one. Daily quantity report, traffic control checks. Are things adequate there, like you just talked? Document as-bills, schedule field and plant inspection for the next day. So all those things are things that you as the inspector should be helping with and dealing with. That is all part what you would want to be doing, also assisting with the weekly diary and weekly meetings and agendas. So as inspectors, you may not be doing that right now, but someday you're gonna be the project supervisor, you're gonna be leading these meetings, you're gonna be the assistant, so be aware of that. Certified payrolls, labor compliance, compliance with SWIFT, different things like that. And monthly, then you get into the review of the labor, the compliance, material on hands, and processing. So a lot of stuff, it's not new, it's not rocket science, it's just a reminder of how documentation goes. So any questions anybody has on anything we talked about there? Okay, so let's take a 15-minute break, so about maybe 12 to 2 or so.
How you doing back here, Sticky?
I stopped.
Okay, but I'm just, I know there's.
Nice hair.
Well, thank you.
That's so bright.
Thank you, I just did it.
It looks fresh.
Like crazy. Would you still do it? I'm like, it's fun. It's not like I have my whole head. I have to put it back in the corner no one sees it. If I'm wearing pink, I'm just fun. So the next week is a different class.
It's the next week is the refresher, so this is the 2 weeks. They take tests.
So then at
some point they,
like every year.
Yeah,
Hi.
Morning. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Great.